Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are we?
Great.
Oh, no. I've seen this movie before. The presenter comes on, he's met with a wall of silence, like a librarian's conference. We're going to try it again. How are we going, everyone?
Yay!
Excellent. Any Americans in the audience? How you doing? Excellent. Well, I was very pleased to get, of course, the National Operations job. That was a big job for me, but I was even more pleased in a way to get the General Manager's job. I was a bit younger then, and I thought more highly of myself then. And I remember sitting at my desk a couple of days after the appointment, and I was wearing my 5-piece Target suit, looking fantastic, and there was a call from the box office saying, "Doug, there's a call for you on line 3, will you take it?" Wow, I'm the General Manager, of course I was going to take it. Yes, Doug Henderson, General Manager here, how can I help you? Well, it's Phil here, I'm in cubicle 3 of the men's toilets and we got no paper. Can you send some up, please? And from then on I knew that perhaps the job wasn't quite as sexy as I thought. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start off by taking you way back. I want you to close your eyes for a minute or so, and I'm going to take you back to your childhood. And I want to find out what the first movie is that you saw at the cinema. What was your first cinematic experience? Close your eyes, have a think about it. Who took you to that movie? But most importantly, what was the movie's name? Okay, I'm going to ask some people to share. My friend down here, what's your name?
Francine.
Francine?
Francine from Australia.
What was it?
Francine.
Francine. What was the movie's name? Okay, what was the movie's name? That was the movie, was it?
The first movie that I saw was Sound of Music.
Sound of Music, 1963, Julie Andrews, correct?
Yes.
Yep, and what a mammoth hit it was. Now, what about my friends down here? Say it again. Mary Poppins. Was that Julie Andrews as well? Yeah, Julie Andrews as well. I think 1962, another massive big film. Alan?
It's The Graduate.
The Graduate with Anne Bancroft, who was married to Noah Brooks, of course, and Dustin Hoffman, 1969, very, very avant-garde film for its time. How are your latecomers going? You okay? Terrific. Well, I'm supposed to give a lecture here today, guys, but I don't really do that. I'm just going to make it conversational and we'll just take our time. We do have a bit of stuff to move through, but my main objective is that I provide a little bit of light entertainment for you, and I don't want to hit you over the head too much with facts and figures. Is that okay? Terrific. If you come to the whole 4 talks that I'm doing, I can assure you that you will be as knowledgeable as a Spielberg or a Lucas, and you'll be able to go back to your family and friends and embarrass them with the amount of movie knowledge that you know. So today we'll be looking at a variety of things. As I say, I'm doing 4 talks. We'll talk about behind the cinema industry as we go. I'll be examining 7 or 8 different concepts, from the revenue waterfall to where the money goes when you buy a ticket, to who's who on the set, to what the difference is between an executive producer, and a director. I'll be going through candy bars, where cinemas make their money, all sorts of stuff. We're looking at about 45 films in total, and I must say from the start that one of my favourite clips, if not my favourite clip, is on tomorrow's talk, of course. It's the end clip, and it is a fantastic, very, very interesting clip I think you'll enjoy. Here's a little bit of Matt Damon giving you an update on the current cinema industry.
So I think a scenario lots of viewers can relate to is sitting on the couch on a Friday night, going through the streaming services, cycling through the movies and thinking to themselves, they're not making movies for me anymore. As somebody who's been intimately involved in movie making for 30 years, what are the macro Hollywood conditions behind that sentiment?
Well, so what happened was the DVD was a huge part of our business, of our revenue stream, and technology has just made that obsolete. And so the movies that we used to make, you could afford to not make all of your money when it played in the theater, because you knew you had the DVD coming behind the release, and 6 months later you'd get all, a whole nother chunk. It would be like reopening the movie almost. And when that went away, changed the type of movies that we could make. I did this movie Behind the Candelabra when I talked to a studio executive who explained it was a $25 million movie. I would have to put that much into print and advertising, right, to market it, what we call P&A. So I'd have to put that in P&A. So now I'm in $50 million. I have to split everything I get with the exhibitor, right, the people who own the movie theaters. So I would have to make $100 million before I got into profit. And the idea of making $100 million on a story about like this love affair between these two people, yeah, I love everyone in the movie, but that's suddenly a massive gamble in a way that it wasn't in the 1990s when they were making all those kind of movies, the kind of movies that I loved and the kind of movies that were my bread and butter.
So a very interesting and succinct visitation of what's going on in today's movie industry. We won't be talking about that right now. So we are going to talk about the main thing is the 70s and the new Hollywood era, but I want to bring you up to date with that. First of all, I'm going to go right back to the 1900s. Before I do, just let me tell you that all the clips, that's a longish clip, all the clips go for between 40 and 80 seconds. So if you don't like a clip, just hang in there. So D.W. Griffiths was the first person to direct a movie. By the way, this talk goes for about 6 or 7 minutes, this part of it. D.W. Griffiths produced and directed the first movie in 1910, and that's when Hollywood was first formed. And in 1920, Hollywood was going gangbusters, and by 1920, it was responsible for 85% of the world's box office and 85% of the world's film production. Now, it's basically the case now, not so much the film production, because Bollywood makes more movies than Hollywood, but in actual terms of box office revenue, it's still the number one source of revenue. 85% of the total world's population, total world box office comes from Hollywood. In 1920, the big movie system was in vogue, and people weren't really happy with that. I'm talking about the actors now and the artists. And 3 actors, Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, and Douglas Fairbanks, they started their own studio called United Artists. And this studio went for the next 60 or 80 years and came a cropper in around about the end of the 70s with a particular film. Anyone know what that film might be? A Michael Cimino film. He made The Deer Hunter. It was called Heaven's Gate, and that basically broke that studio. From 1920 to 1948, the cinema industry was absolutely fantastic, just going gangbusters. Not only did they have this studio system in place where all the actors were under contract, they were being loaned out to other studios, they couldn't do their own thing. There was no star system, everyone got the same money. And the studios not only owned the production side of things, making movies, but they also owned all the cinemas across the United States. So this was a real money earner. Now in 1948, a couple of years after the end of the Second World War, it came a cropper. There was 2 reasons. One was television. Television started in America when? Anyone know?
55.
In the 50s, yeah. Yeah, about 55. Started actually in 1948, 1949, but it got going in about 1955. That's when NBC and ABC and the big TV studios started. So television became a major competitor, and this was bad for the cinemas in the 1950s, but they continued on okay. In 1960, Americans were going to the cinema 45 million times a week. But by the end of the decade, Americans were going to the cinema 15 million times a week. Again, 2 problems. One was television again. So television had gone from a 6-inch black and white screen with programming for about 1 hour a day to now colour television had come in the 60s. And it was estimated that 1 in 2 Americans owned a television. So this was huge competition. The second thing was the studios themselves. They were still making very old movies and doing it the old way. And basically they were in competition with the cinemas, and they were trying these big extravaganzas to try to compete with television. Pardon me, guys. So in 1960, in the early 1960s, we had these terrific films like My Fair Lady, Mary Poppins, and these films made a lot of money. But by the end of the decade, they tried the same thing with Hello Dolly, and Phineas Rainbow and Star, big musicals, and they failed dramatically. So the 1970s came along, and 1970s is attributed to the new Hollywood era. But I think it was the end of the 1960s when New Hollywood came into vogue. We started to get a lot of different films. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, sort of an anti-establishment film to a degree. Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger. And Guess Who's Coming to Dinner with Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, and of course The Graduate, which we've already spoken about. So these were new films coming into the market, and they were coming to the market because the studio system wasn't working very well. And so we had all these independent filmmakers starting to evolve. People like Spielberg, Scorsese, Woody Allen, Robert Altman, Francis Ford Coppola. They had been overseas and they'd studied in the European film schools, and they'd also worked on film sets over there, and they came back here with a whole bunch of new ideas. And this was augmented by the emergence of all these new Hollywood stars: Robert Redford, Robert De Niro, Robert Duvall, Meryl Streep, Dustin Hoffman, all these guys. And so you've got this terrific combination of new directors, new stars, and you've got this creative divergence, creative renaissance, really. And I suppose you could say that the world was changing as well, so this made a big difference. In 1969, we had something coming on that was truly amazing, and it was Easy Rider with Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda. The real story behind this is that it took about $350,000 to make, and it grossed $60 million. And this made this big studio sit up and take notice that there was new people, new ideas, new ways of doing things. So Easy Rider was a very, very big film. Here's a little bit of Alfred Hitchcock.
With a baby was at the age of 6 months, and the mother says, "Boo," and scares the hell out of the baby, gives it the hiccups, and then the baby giggles. That's its first moment of fear. Later on, it's on a swing, getting higher and higher, and catching its breath when it goes too high. And so it goes. We all